Ashwood Manor loomed, a spectre against the stormy grey sky. The house was a monument to decay, its once bright facade now cracked and crumbling. Vines like skeletal fingers clutched at the walls, reaching towards the empty windows that stared out like vacant eyes. The people of the town spoke of the manor in hushed tones. They told tales of tragedy and madness. The whispers wove a tapestry of fear around the estate, warning of a darkness that lingered within. They spoke of the Ashwood family, their downfall, and the curse that bound them to the manor. The manor was more than just an empty house. It was a vessel, filled to the brim with sorrow. Each creaking step and sigh of the wind seemed to carry the weight of its tormented past. The townsfolk knew. They looked at the manor with a mixture of fear and pity, a place to avoid, lest one be consumed by its darkness. Clara had arrived in the town only a week earlier. The manor, perched on the hill overlooking the town square, had immediately captivated her. Its desolation called to something deep within her, a need to understand the sorrow that clung to the old house like cobwebs. She had heard the whispers, of course. Every newcomer did. But she dismissed them as superstitious nonsense, the remnants of a bygone era. Clara was a woman of logic, of science. She scoffed at the idea of curses and hauntings. Yet as she stood before the rusted iron gates, a shiver ran down her spine. The air grew cold. The feeling was fleeting. Still, it planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She pushed the gates open and stepped onto the overgrown path. The crunch of gravel beneath her feet, the only sound in the oppressive silence. The air inside the manor was heavy, thick with the smell of decay and dust. It settled on Clara's tongue like ash. Sunbeams filtering through the grime-covered windows illuminated particles of dust dancing in the stillness. The silence was a living thing, broken only by the sound of her own footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Each room she passed through spoke of a life lived and lost. Faded grandeur clung to the tattered velvet curtains, and the once shining chandeliers now draped in cobwebs. The house whispered to her, not in words, but in the rustle of unseen things and the feeling of being watched. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was an intruder, trespassing on a grief so profound it permeated the very walls. Section 4, A Sea of Glass. She found herself drawn to a room at the end of the hall on the second floor. It was a grand room, its high ceiling lost in shadows, but it was the mirror that dominated the room. It was a massive thing, stretching from floor to ceiling, its ornate frame crafted from silver that had tarnished with time. The glass itself was cloudy, as if 1,000 breaths had fogged its surface. It felt ancient, older than the house itself, a sea of glass that had borne witness to generations of joy and sorrow. Clara stood before it, her reflection a hazy outline in its depths. She raised a hand, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into the frame. As she did, the air grew colder. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. A low hum resonated from the mirror, a mournful sound that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. Section 5. The Face in the Mirror. Suddenly, the fog on the mirror's surface began to clear. Clara watched, mesmerized, as the reflection of the room behind her faded, replaced by something else. Another room swam into view, a grand ballroom filled with laughing people in elegant attire. Music played, faint but distinct, a waltz from a bygone era. And then she saw her, a woman, her back to Clara, her dark hair piled atop her head in intricate braids. The woman was beautiful, her gown shimmering under the crystal chandeliers. She moved with an ethereal grace, her laughter like the tinkling of bells. Clara tried to speak, but her voice seemed trapped in her throat. The woman in the mirror stopped dancing and turned, as if sensing Clara's gaze. Her face, when it came into view, was a mask of sorrow. Her eyes, wide and filled with a haunting sadness, met Clara's. And in that instant, Clara knew. This was Eleanor Ashwood.